there is consideration now of a small biomass plant in the Fort Bragg vicinity. There's been discussions, as you know, in the past of other ones in the inland corridor. What do you see the potential for an appropriately created and managed biomass facility to deal with yard waste in the air, the growing concerns and questions about air quality, future regulations from the state? Do you see that biomass could have a potential of impacting that, and if so, to what degree, and where do you see this going? Just some brief initial comments.
Excuse me while I'm coughing here. The biomass is you're looking at a 99% reduction in emissions when you take material that would be burned in the open and put it into a boiler. And because of the scrubbers, because of the emission requirements, and because of the higher temperature combustion, you're basically turning most of the particulate into gas. It's a very efficient way of dealing with material that at this point is burned anyway. And there was a meeting, both Tom and I attended, about a proposed project here, potential project that is proposed in the Fort Bragg area that has a lot of opportunities. It seems to me to be one of the most viable proposals I've seen recently. There was a proposal a number of years ago with the city for the electric utility in Ukiah. It was a smaller plant. The technology was a little different. But these have a lot of opportunities. And one of the problems with these projects, as I said at that meeting, when I talked to my folks around the state, is they rely on the National Forest to provide the material that they burn, particularly in the Sierra foothills. And the National Forest doesn't have the labor or the money to bring the materials out of the forest to the boiler. Here we have so much private timberland that has a buildup of material. They're more than willing to do that transport provided the economics are there. With the Forest Service, it's just a matter of it's cheaper for them to burn it in the open, and they're going to burn it in the open. Particularly the Quincy site that was built, which is right in the middle of the National Forest, they bring in material from the Central Valley to burn, and they haul it all the way up to Quincy. If you've ever been up 70 through the Feather River Canyon, it's a complete waste of time. It's really unfortunate. And here we've got a facility, proposed facility that would be near forest land. Seems like a good location. It's going to have to go through a whole bunch of hurdles before it gets built, but that's a great opportunity. And it could potentially, if it worked with solid waste and with green waste that we get to our transfer stations, there's a lot of opportunities to reduce emissions and still get this material off of the land. It's a fire hazard.
Well, I'm encouraged by the private sector in our area wanting to step up and do this, and they seem to a large degree, be very interested in this and are seriously contemplating how does it get funded, how does it operate, and could it operate in concert with a small mill or other industrial kinds of components in a green technology manner. So I'm very encouraged by this, that they want to be partners in this with whomever else from the public sector. So I think that's good. On the note of air quality, I do get calls, and I would like those inland to recognize this, because you wouldn't think on the coast that there would be air quality concerns, but there are, and I occasionally get calls on related to the open burn situation. Maybe you could just describe to us what are the environmental conditions that create that inversion, or whatever the appropriate term would be, for the stagnant air, I think, that we get here. And I get calls from folks that say, you know, my children that have asthma can't go outside on these particular days. It occurs sporadically, and maybe you could just sort of enlighten us on what those conditions are and what we might do about that. I mean, you've mentioned the enforcement component, but there are air quality issues on the coast, and I'm not sure that folks really realize that.
Well, the main problem is an inversion. In the inland valleys, they say 90% of the time we get an inversion. It might not be strong in the summer, but it's still present. We were getting pretty strong inversions in August this year. I was very surprised. We were seeing actually fog in the Willits Valley in August. When the air is in an inversion, it's trapped. It can't mix. And so that's when the smoke builds up under the inversion. If the inversion's strong enough, we make it a no-burn day. The Air Resources Board makes that call in Sacramento. We have the option of overriding them and making it no burn when they say it's a burn day. We do that very rarely. On the coast, even though we don't necessarily have all the valleys that we have inland, the air can still get trapped under the inversion. And what you'll see is kind of a lens, lack of a better term, coming from like the city of Fort Bragg and angling up the foothills. And it'll go up to, about the Pygmy Forest elevation. And the air will just sit under that lens. And there might be wind up above there that's taking things off to the west. But if that air is not mixing, it's just sitting there. And so we do get calls on the coast, and I think one of the bigger problems, and Steve could talk more about this, unfortunately he had to leave, is it's hard to get the fuel as dry as people get it inland. So people are burning stuff that's wet, they're burning material that maybe has been rained on and soaked up water, or they're burning stuff, hopefully not, that's half composted, where it really just doesn't want to burn. So a lot of what we see is burning material that shouldn't be burned, obviously garbage, lumber, those issues. Then we see material burned that really needs to dry before it's burned. And then the final thing we see is people burning when they shouldn't burn, which is late in the evenings. The burn hours are only from 9 to 3. Some fire districts don't want people burning afternoon, but certainly in the Simpson Lane area, I've been out there 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night and seen people burning. And that's a problem, because that's when the air stops moving and the pile will smolder through the evening and smoke out the houses in the area.
Supervisor Pinchas.
Just a couple comments on biomass. There's been, in the last 20 years, there's been 2 projects. They weren't concepts, they were projects that were turned down. One was in Cobolo 20 years ago, and the last one was about 15 years ago in the city of Willits. Those were private, would have been built, but the local governing agency, Board of Supervisors, and the city of Willits turned down both of those projects. They weren't concepts, they were going to be built, but they were turned down. We have another dilemma in Mendocino County right now when you talk about biomass. Biomass takes a large amount of water. I don't believe that all our communities on water restrictions or water moratoriums is going to allow most of their water to be used to support a biomass plant. So until we address the water and water development issues in Mendocino County, we can't look forward to biomass.
Yeah, boilers require large amounts of water, and that was a topic that was discussed at this meeting we had. I've been to 2 of these meetings talking about biomass. You may have been at one of them, John, maybe not, but the technical issues from the air quality standpoint are pretty easy, but the political issues are not, and you really have to have the political support and a broad base, and I think this new opportunity, this new project, they are talking to a large cross-section of the community, and they may be able to pull that off, but there's definitely some technical hurdles and there's a lot of political hurdles.
Comes down to a local land use decision.
Yeah, but the air district is not going to say no to a facility because we really don't have that option. As long as they technically meet the standards, we don't say no to projects.
But it would have to take a development, a large amount of water in order to make a biomass plant viable in any place in Mendocino County.
Yeah.
And Chris, one comment I have, I'm not seeing any other comments. In Shasta County, they have the Wheeler Barrel Biogeneration Plant. They also have free transfer sites throughout Shasta County to collect green waste, to haul those to the plant to generate power. As part of any biomass plant, I think we need to include that as a study to see if that's feasible for this county, being the 5th largest geographical county in the state of California, before we move to any more draconian or drastic measures of eliminating burning. So
they also have Shasta Dam over there too.
Okay, any other items before?
I'll add one note. The issue of feedstock, is what type of material you're going to burn, because we have different wood as you go from the coastal regime to the